Happy Wednesday! It's Miss Shannon, and today I'm going to read part 2 of Chapter 7 of The Wishing Spell by Chris Colfer. Chapter 7, Rapunzel's Tower. I must have searched every patch of trees in the charming kingdom. Finally, in the woods just south of the Red Riding Hood kingdom border, I found him. The traveling tradesman was an odd, elderly, disheveled man. He wore several layers of raggedy clothing, and he had a long gray beard. There were dark circles under his eyes, and one of the eyes wandered to the left, so it was difficult to tell what or whom he was looking at. He traveled with a large cart that was pulled by a single mule. He was making a deal with a small boy holding a chicken when I first saw him. Wear this bear claw and you'll grow up to be the strongest boy in the village, the tradesman told the boy. I then placed a necklace with a large bear claw around his neck and took the chicken from him. The boy smiled and ran off. The tradesman placed the chicken in the back of his cart. He must have made other trades that day because he had already collected 2 geese and a pig. Are you a friend or a foe? The tradesman asked me. A friend, I believe, I said. Oh, good, he said with a jolly clap. Then what may I do for you, friend? Would you like a bag of magic pebbles that grow into boulders? It'll only cost you a duck. Or perhaps you'd like to trade a swine for a loaf of bread that'll never make you hungry again. No, thank you, I said cautiously. I've come to ask you for advice. Advice? The tradesman said. The eyebrow above his wandering eyebrows. That, my friend, is something no one has ever asked me for. What do you wish to know? I am wondering, I started, but wasn't sure how to put it into words. What is the farthest distance you've traveled? The tradesman scratched his beard and thought about it. Well, I'd honestly say there isn't a place in this world I haven't been. He told me I've traveled from the southwest to the northeast and from the southeast to the northwest. I've been from the bottom of the corner kingdom to the top of the sleeping kingdom, and from the tip of the elf empire to the coast of the fairy kingdom. What about farther than that? I interrupted him, fearing he might continue listing every journey he had ever taken. Farther than that? Both the tradesman's eyebrows were raised now. What's farther than that? Only ocean is beyond that, and that's it. What about a different world? Have you ever heard of one, or how to travel to one? I finally asked. The tradesman got a funny look in his eye, or should I say, Young man, I've been all over the world, and I've never seen any suggestion of there being another, he said. This topic upset him somehow, and he hopped aboard his cart and took the reins of his mule. Wait, please don't go, I pleaded. You youngsters always take pleasure in harassing an old man. Well, I won't allow it, he said. He began to travel up the path. I was so desperate I stood in front of his mule and was nearly trampled. I mean you no harm, old man, I assured him. You don't understand. I've been to another world, another place and time, and have seen extraordinary things. I need to go back. It may be the greatest wish I will ever have. My arms were spread out, and I fell to my knees. I felt like an imbecile confessing a preposterous need to a preposterous man. The tradesman sat still with his good eye fixed on me. Is it truly the most desired wish in your heart? He asked. Yes, I pleaded. I've never wanted anything more in my life. If it's a wish you desire, then there's only one thing you need, he said. What is that? I asked him. The wishing spell, the tradesman said. At first I thought he was joking. The wishing spell, I asked him. You mean the childish legend? It's as real as the nose on my face, the tradesman said. Many men have spent their lives trying to obtain it. Legend has it that if you collect a series of objects and place them in close proximity, the collector's one true wish will be granted. I didn't know whether or not to believe him. Perhaps he was harassing me now. My brain was critical, but my heart chose to learn more. How do I find these items? I asked. I don't have the slightest idea, he said. Now I was frustrated with him. All of that explanation for nothing. I turned my back on him and began heading back home. But I know someone who does, the tradesman called after me. Who? I demanded. I never trade for free, the tradesman said, and extended an open palm toward me. I placed a few gold coins in his hand. He kept his hand extended, and I placed a few more coins until he was satisfied. Her name is Hagatha, the tradesman said. Where can I find her? Take this path west into the dwarf forest, past the 3 boulders, then follow the smoke, the tradesman said. That was all the direction he gave. He took the reins of his mule and traveled away from me. Had I been thinking clearly, I would have chased after him and asked for more instructions. But instead, I took off running toward the dwarf forest. I'd never been inside the dwarf forest before. I had been told of the danger since I was a child, and once I was there, I knew why I had been warned. The trees grew so thick and close that someone could be standing 3 feet away from you and you would never know they were there. It took 2 days to find the 3 boulders the tradesman had spoken of. They were 3 large rocks that stuck straight out of the ground and were tilted in a peculiar position. I thought perhaps they might have been pointing at something, so I lowered my head to look in the direction they pointed. The boulders pointed directly between 2 trees separated just enough that you could see a wide patch of sky, and in this patch I could see smoke. I ran toward the source of the smoke. Wherever it was coming from was completely off the path, and I almost seriously injured myself, jumping over bushes and tree roots as I went. Occasionally I could see the sky through the tree branches and could tell I was off track. I must have traveled in circles for hours. Every time I thought I was just about to find the place from which the smoke came, the wind would shift it in another direction. I was lost. Every way I turned looked exactly the same. I felt as if the forest had swallowed me. The sun was setting and the smoke became harder to see. I started to panic. There was no shelter in sight. I thought for sure a treacherous beast would find me during the night and make a feast out of me. I started running again. I could barely see where I was going at this point. I could hear howling in the distance. I tripped and fell straight through a large thorn bush. I landed hard on the grass on the other side of the thorn bush. I was scraped, scratched, and bleeding. I got to my feet and looked around. I was standing in a large circular clearing in the forest, surrounded by a large wall of thorn bush. In the center of this clearing was a small hut with a hay roof and a brick chimney, and rising out of this chimney was the smoke I had been following. No wonder it had been so hard to find. I must have been wandering in circles around it, not knowing it was hidden behind the thorn bush. I approached the hut slowly. It had 1 door and 2 windows, and that was all. I went to knock on the door, but it burst open before I had a chance. "Who are you?" said the woman who emerged from the hut. I knew from the second I saw her that it was Hagatha. She looked like a human tree stump. She was short and wore a brown hooded cloak. Deep wrinkles circled her face, and one of her eyes was squinted. Her nose was one of the smallest I'd ever seen and was neighbored by a gigantic mole. "Are you Hagatha?" I asked her. "How did you find me?" she snapped. "I tripped through the thorn bush," I said. "But how did you know I was here?" she asked. Her eyes squinted even more. "A traveling tradesman," I told her. "He said you knew of the wishing spell." Hagatha grunted and sighed at the same time. Her lips wrinkled and looked me up and down. Reluctantly, she gestured me to follow her inside. Come in, Hagatha said. The inside of the hut was an utter mess. There were vials of strange liquids everywhere. Some bubbled, some glistened, some even steamed. There were dozens of glass jars containing the strangest things, dead and alive reptiles, insects of every species, even a glass jar of various eyeballs. Even though they had been plucked out of their owner's lids, I swear one of them blinked at me. I was surprised to see how many animals were inside the hut as well. Everything from geese and chickens to hummingbirds and monkeys all resided in cages. They were all restless prisoners, no doubt. "Have a seat," Hagatha instructed. She pointed to a chair at the end of the table so large that it took up the entire hut. "I see you are a collector of sorts," I said. She did not welcome the conversation. She ignored me and collected a few items around the room. A bowl here, a vial there. "The thorn bush surrounding your home is very clever," I said. "It must keep out most unwanted visitors." "Most," she said and glared at me. "That thorn bush is from the Sleeping Kingdom. I planted it here and it grew around my home in a perfect circle, just as it grew around the castle while the queen was in her 100-year slumber. You are the first to break through it." "I do apologize. This will cost you 15 gold coins," Hagatha said, and took a seat across from me. "For what?" I asked. "You want to know what the wishing spell items are, don't you?" she asked. "This is why you are here, is it not?" I reached into my pocket and laid all the coins I had left on the table. Unfortunately, doing business with the tradesman had left me short. "I only have 14 coins, I told her. Hagatha did not look pleased. "You stupid youth and your wishes. Very well," she said, and scooped up all the coins with one swipe. She placed a bowl in front of her and emptied the contents of 2 vials into it, one red liquid, the other blue. One eye of an eagle, the wings of a pixie, and the heart of a newt, Agatha said, and added these items into the bowl. Plus 3 drops of giant's blood, the big toe of an ogre, and the straw of gold hay. That completes the potion. With the ingredients added, the liquid in the bowl started to smoke and glow. Agatha leaned over it and breathed in. She closed her eyes and lost herself in a moment of deep thought. Does this potion tell you what the wishing spell items are? No, but it helps me remember, Agatha said. You aren't the first and you won't be the last to request this list. Consider yourself warned. Many people have lost their lives trying to acquire these items. They are impossible to collect. I'd rather die trying than live the rest of my life wondering if I could have done it, I said. Then listen carefully to what I am about to say, because I'll only say it once, Agatha said. I leaned as close to her as possible. The anticipation made every second feel like an hour. This is what I had come all this way for. There are 8, Agatha said. She took a deep breath and then listed the items. Glass that housed up a lonely soul up till midnight's final toll. A saber from the deepest sea meant for a groom's mortality. The bark of a basket held in fright while running from a bark with bite. A stony crown that's made to share from deep within a savage lair. A needle that pierced the lovely skin of a princess with beauty found within. A wavy lock of golden rope that once was freedom's only hope. Glittering jewels whose value increased after preserving the false deceased. Teardrops of a maiden fairy feeling neither magical nor merry. I repeated the list to myself the entire way home and wrote the wishing spell list and my journey thus far into this journal. I don't know how I'm going to gather these items, but my goal is to find them and then record how I manage it in case I ever need to do it again. If you're reading this, I hope it means I succeeded. And if you're reading this and are about to start a journey of your own, I wish you luck. Wow, Alex said, looking up from the journal. You can say that again, Connor said. You read that much faster than I did. Did you read any further? Alex asked. Did he find all the items? Did he make it back? I don't know. There are a lot of pages missing, Connor said. Alex scanned through the list of the wishing spell items. She hadn't expected them to be hidden within riddles. Most of these are pretty easy to figure out, she said, like a needle that pierced the lovely skin of a princess from beauty found within. That's obviously the spindle on Sleeping Beauty's spinning wheel. And a wavy lock of golden rope that once was freedom's only hope, Connor said. That's totally a lock of Rapunzel's hair. Connor looked around the space where he was sitting. From between 2 floorboards, he pulled out a long lock of golden hair. Found one, Connor said. One of the things I noticed when I got up here was how much that Rapunzel girl shed. Now we're 1/8 of the way home. Alex carefully wrapped the lock of golden hair in a tissue from her school bag. What do you suppose glass that housed a lonely soul up till midnight's final toll means? She asked. Whose soul was covered in glass? I know, Connor said. Cinderella's glass slipper that covered the sole of her foot. Of course, Alex said. The list was spoken. Maybe Agatha said meant soul like a foot, but the man heard it as soul like his person's spirit. Connor, you're a genius. There is an alternative spelling? Connor asked, but Alex went on. I wonder what the bark of a basket held in fright while running from a bark with bite means, asked Alex, thinking hard. Basket, 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 bite, bite, bite. Little Red Riding Hood. Her basket must have been made out of tree bark, and the bark with bite is talking about the big bad wolf. Okay, that would make sense. Alex stood up and started pacing around the tower. Glittering jewels whose value increased after preserving the false deceased. That's a tough one, she said. Who was falsely deceased? Didn't people think Snow White was dead after she bit the poisoned apple? Yes, that's right, said Alex, jumping up and down. She had a coffin made of glass and jewels from the dwarf mines. That must be what it means. I'm so glad Dad and Grandma read to us so much growing up, Connor said. Whoever would have thought that would have been useful? Teardrops of a maiden fairy feeling neither magical nor merry. I guess we'll just have to find a fairy who has recently broken up with her boyfriend or something. Alex surmised. You don't think we could just kick her and make her cry? That seems easier to me, Connor asked. Alex ignored him and viciously flipped through the journal again. Glass zipper, check. Spindle, check. Coffin, check. Alex said, according to the notes scribbled in the margins, the author of the journal seems to agree with our guesses. I still don't know what some of these are, like a saber from the deepest sea meant for a groom's mortality, or a stony crown that's made to share from deep within a savage lair. Like I said, there are a lot of pages missing, Connor said. Alex was disheartened by this. The items they knew of seemed virtually impossible to collect, let alone the items they didn't know of. She walked over to the window and looked out at the view. The sun was about to set, and one by one the fireplaces in the village nearby were lit, and sent trails of smoke into the darkening sky. What if we get some of these riddles wrong? She asked. What if we guess the wrong thing? What if the author guessed wrong? What if he never made it back? What if he died trying? We'll just have to do our best, Connor said, joining Alex at the window. Some annoying little girl told me once that optimism always pays off, and usually she's right about these things. Alex smirked warmly at her brother. Okay then, she said. So far we have a lock of Rapunzel's hair. We still need to collect Cinderella's slipper, Sleeping Beauty's spindle, jewels from Snow White's coffin, bark from Red Riding Hood's basket, tears from a fairy, plus 2 other items that we have no idea about. Connor gulped hearing the list. They both looked out over the horizon and at the sea of trees that surrounded the tower. Somewhere out there, all these things were waiting to be found. It looks like we're going to see more of the Land of Stories than we thought, Connor said. That is the end of Chapter 7, and I will see you tomorrow with Part 1 of Chapter 8. Have a great rest of your night. Bye.